So, welcome everybody. I am modernly known as Kat Ellen, and in the SCA, I am known as Dame Ailey Swan. I'm not a Laurel. I happen to be the hand up volunteer pelicany type, but spinning has been my addiction since I found it. And you may have noticed that in the description of this virtual arts and sciences class for my local barony, which then we shared more widely than just Caid and Leondomir, which for those of you who are not from Caid, that's the Long Beach area out on the coast near Los Angeles, but not really, but sort of. And when we set this up originally to be just a couple of, virtual arts and sciences classes for the barony, that was when we realized, wait a minute, if it's virtual, why don't we send that invitation out wider? So, welcome to those of you who are not local to Southern California. And I can talk nonstop about spinning in almost any environment. And frequently I do demos at non-SCA textile events or demos. And we'll do like a pattern that might last 5 minutes in repeat constantly for 10 hours. And uh, one of the things I like being able to do the most is teach anyone who is new at something their beginning level skills, the fundamentals. So when I was a dance instructor, I had the most fun teaching the people who did not know what they were doing. And whenever I am teaching spinning and someone says, "Oh, I tried to learn once, but all I can do is drop it," I say, "Well, it's up to you. If you want to learn to do more than just drop it, I can coach you through that. If you don't want to, that's fine. We don't have to be spinning buddies to be buddies." So that is where I'm coming from in this world. And when I found spinning, I learned in a suspended fashion. I learned with what some people jokingly call the flying buttress anchor, which I will show you on camera. And then since then, I've actually changed and adjusted some of my technique over time, partly because the author of this book, Abby Frankmont, has turned out to become a friend of mine over the years. And so she is one of the people that has fun teasing me about some of my old techniques before I had any experience from other people. But at the same time, I know that some of the things that I was taught early are things that are still out there being taught to people. So I don't weigh them as being bad or good. Everyone needs to adjust to their own technique and try things, experiment with things. What happened when you tried? So that is where I'm coming from on some of these skills with spindle. So I am going to go straight to the other camera, which is going to take a little bit of adjusting here to make sure that it works so that we can look at fiber and look at some tools and see spinning happening. So I have a variety of things here on my table. I'm going to move some of them out of the way, get them off screen, because what I want to do is talk a little bit about some tools and then some twists. And let me make sure I've got my list nearby. There we go. The first thing I really love to have people do for spinning is to put the tools aside and take a look at some fiber. Now, you can get fiber in a variety of formats and preparations, and it all looks different. But I have a couple different, like just jumbles of fiber here. And because this has the best contrast, I'm going to start with this white, and it's also in really great condition. When you first get some fiber and it's time to work on spinning, you have to spend a little time just goofing around with it in order to understand if it's going to be helpful or if it needs a little coaching to be more helpful for you. So in this one, I can feel that it's got a little bit of resistance to sliding this way. So to improve it, I want to kind of open it sideways and then slide. This one has been bouncing around in a bag for so long, I can see that it is fairly matted on the outside, and it's going to be very resistant at first to any tugging. This direction, it does not want to pull at all. So if I pull apart, like I'm fluffing it up sideways, or maybe taking what could be considered like a little garden hose of fiber that's compressed, and I want to open it up to the size of a fire hose, I'm getting more air in between those fibers, I'm undoing some of the felting that's happening on the outside, the light felting. And when I've made it not just flat, but also three-dimensionally round, now those side pieces that are catching on each other, they should start to slide a little bit eventually. There, I've got a little bit of a slide there. So I do want to play with the fiber and figure out if it's going to be nice or mean to me. Now, this one is a jumble of a variety of things that I blended once. And again, it's kind of clumping now. So I could take any one of these and just pull a few little hairs off, another few little hairs off, and start stacking them next to each other. Let's see if I can make that even show up more by putting a little bit of white on there at the bottom. There we go. And then as I pull little tiny hairs off the end and set them down on my little stack, I know that those are not felted at all anymore. Now they're really coming apart nicely. And I'm getting another bit of information about this blended fiber, and that is how long are the little pieces in here. Now, because this one is a blend, I know that there's short and long and medium and everything in between in this blend. So this is going to take a little bit more skill to spin easier with a bunch of different fiber lengths. So I'm going to go back to that really pretty white. I'm going to go back to some of the stuff I haven't pulled apart before. And this is what it looked like when it came out of the bag. Very nicely prepared, so well combed and overlapping. But we know this is not how long the wool was on the sheep. This does happen to be wool. So if I put my hands close together in the middle and I tug a little bit, I'm going to feel a resistance, almost like if you were holding your own hair or someone else's hair, maybe a long braid, in two hands and tugged. There's a very distinct feeling of both hands holding the same hairs on two ends, and you can't tear them apart without actually tearing and ripping the hair. But if I loosely hold the fiber in one hand and pull some of these loose fibers off the other end, I can stack them on top of each other and I can see, wow, this is a really long set of fibers. This is what's called the staple length. And wow, that is really long. I can do that with either hand. I could hold it in my right and pull little bits off with the left, hold things in the left, and pull little bits off with the right. This will matter later as you find which hand does a better job of controlling fiber and holding it loosely versus which hand is going to do twirly bits. Twirly bits. What I mean by twirly bits. Well, let's talk about twist, and I'm going to do it without playing with fiber yet. And I'm going to start with a really large example that shows up well on a camera. And that is, I'm going to take a stick. This happens to be a broken paint stick, the handle of a paintbrush. And I have a dark and I have a light yarn, and I'm just going to throw them off the table and let them roll away into my kitchen. Excellent. At least they won't be under my chair. I'm going to take this light and this dark thread that are not wound around each other, and I'm going to hold them on the end of this stick here, and I'm going to wrap it around the stick. Then I'm going to turn the stick sideways and unwind off the stick, and you can already see that the dark and the light are wrapping around each other. So if I do that again, I wrapped it around and then I unwind off the side, you get even more twist. Now I'm going to switch that over to the camera being sideways. Now you can see up and down a little bit easier instead of from overhead. And I've got my dark and my light fibers. And my stick. And my stick is horizontal to the floor. And again, I'm wrapping the yarn. In this case, I'm going to go from underneath towards me. And I'm wrapping the yarn around. And now when I turn the stick up and down and I pull this off, there's the twist going into those fibers. I'm going to do it again, underneath, and then up and down is the off. This is the way in which the weavers and spinners in the Andes teach the 3 and 4-year-olds to play around with fiber and a stick. And this works really well for making a bulky yarn really fast. You haven't had to actually twirl a stick for a spindle or anything. But what if we did use a spindle? So if I take my spindle here, I take the whirl off for a moment so it's back to being just a stick. Now I'm going to take some fiber, and just to make sure it's visible for you, I'm going to have a little bit of a light fiber and a little bit of a darker fiber. And you can see the two distinct from each other. Now, if I just hold this thick mass of fiber, these out of the view, and I don't make it thinner, when I wrap it around, that's a very, very, very bulky yarn. And, hey, maybe you wanted to make some bulky yarn. Maybe you're trying to do some null binding and you're doing some Viking reenactment or some Scandinavian reenactment in the Viking era. You can't find bulky singles. Maybe you want to make some yourself. But what if I want to make that a little bit thinner? I'm going to have to pull on it again. And there's that same thing that we were doing with pulling the fibers apart earlier, but instead of taking them out, what I want to be able to do is just tug on them a little bit and then stop so it doesn't come apart. So I'm going to tug just a little bit and let it stay overlapped, and then move up to a thick section and tug a little bit so that it stays overlapped. And I'm going to do this for all of it to make that overlap longer. And in some people's books, this is what you have to do with everything. You absolutely must. It's called pre-draft. Oh my goodness, you must pre-draft. Everything must be pre-drafted. I would disagree. There are very few things that are absolute about spinning at all. And there are ways to spin without having to pre-draft. But if you did pre-draft a large quantity, slightly thinner, and then you used your wrap technique and you wrapped the fiber around the stick with the stick on the horizontal, and then lift the stick to the vertical and untwirl the stick without letting it fall away all off, you can see that twist is going in there. So let's add more twist and unwind a bit, and add more twist and unwind a bit. And if I like that yarn and I want to keep that yarn, I have a stick right here and I can just put that yarn on the stick. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide my hand down the attenuated fiber, and you can see the twist is already starting to go into that pulled out area. So I do more wrapping and then turn the stick vertical and slide or unwind a bit. Now the twist is really evening out over that whole length. Twist is a little bit like electricity or water. It's going to keep going until it stops. So it's live from there to here. And oh, what happened when I took the tension off? I'm getting some coiling up on itself. That means I have extra twist. And you're going to need extra twist if you want to make the yarn even longer. So now I've got extra twist. If I release the tension, you get the coiling up. And that's a good sign because it means I could slide out more fiber and more twist is going live. Now, if I pause and stop and just set it down, it tries to uncurl a little bit, but I could also trap it with other things. And it's actually more stable than you might think. If you needed to go and rescue the baby from the fire and, swoop up the toddler so they don't get to run out onto the fighting field and get stabbed by the rapier fighters or run underneath a heavy weapons fighter, this is a great thing. You can just throw it to the ground and come back to it and it'll still be fine. When we come back to it, we just pick it up and that's it. We go right back to doing work. Well, I've got this big section. If I untwirl it, I can slide it more.
all yarn is overlap plus twist. So if you want it to have a different overlap length, if you want to draft it out further, you have to have it be not twisted. If it is twisted, this is impossible to pull. And the minute that it becomes difficult to pull, that is what they call twist locked. So you're looking to have some twist lock for it to be a stable yarn. And you want to reduce that twist lock if you want to be able to draft it more. And so there I've got a nice thick piece of yarn. And if I pull back out again, I get new fiber drafted. Now, this is one of the places where I see the first struggle for some new spinners, and that is they'll take it all the way to the tiniest, wispiest bit, and that twist goes all the way to the very, very end, and there's nothing not twisted. Get that all the way to the end. More and more twist. Doot, 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 doot. And then they're like, all right, how do I join my little fiber right there? Well, that is a little bit small. So I'm going to switch to the overhead one more time. If I get that all the way to the very, very end, and then I try to join, I'm going to have a hard time getting an overlap and twist at the same time into the new yarn. So what I want to do is have a fluffy end when I'm ready to join new fiber.
Kat, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Before you go to joining, when you had it all twisted to the very end, there was that section, probably a half an inch from the spindle on what you've got hanging out right now, that wasn't really twisted. What do you do about a section like that?
I'm going to address that in just a little bit. Great question. Put a pin in that and we'll come right back to it.
Okay.
We will absolutely. Yeah, no problem. So now I've got a less twisted, more fluffy section. And I have lots of fluffy, no twist. This is going to make a safer overlap because I can get twist into both of them at the same time, and then the overlap happens. So in this case, because I'm still using a wrapping technique, I have to put a pinch here, and then I can put new wrapping in and unwind a little bit, and then new twist in. That's almost dizzy making. Sorry about that. And now I've got the coils showing me I have twist available. And then when I start to overlap and draw this out, that twist is going to go all the way out to my pinch. And this is going to be even more visible in the next demo. But the tension shows you better the yarn. If I always try to look at it like this, I'm going to get coiled pigtails and large bits that are less twisted and narrow bits there. Because I mentioned that twist likes to move like electricity or water. If the large bits are thought of as the hills, the water runs down into the narrow, small, lower bits. Twist will always jump over fat parts and land in the thin parts. So when I try to do a little bit more of this, slightly off camera because I'm running out of room, and I've added more twist and I've put it under tension, the yarn is actually looking more consistent now than it did before. With more twist, it's getting compressed down, and with more twist, I had the fibers overlapping each other. So that yarn is actually a lot more stable now. And here I'm going to do a trick where I've set the spindle down. In this case, it's just a stick. And the one that was working the spindle comes over here and holds it. And I've traded that pinch exactly in the same spot. So I'm not sitting here trying to unwind a bunch of fiber. If I let go here, that's my gate, that's my dam, letting the twist run all the way to the end. So technically, my twist is live all the way to the end. But when I want to draft and change the amount of fiber in any section, I have to go to a spot that is not twisted. And here's a nice little trick. I can twirl with just a couple of fingers and I get a nice straight line again. As opposed to pinching way up here or pinching somewhere where I have to try to undo my work. Well, why don't I just put the pinch here and there? I'm already done. So that's the wrapping technique. So I do want to switch to twirling because that's how most of us spin. And this is where I'm going to bring out a couple of different things to show off, including bowls to help track my things. And this is a fantastic way to just practice getting the twirly bits into your hands. So if I take, let's say, this spindle made out of a stainless steel barbecue skewer with a polymer clay bead on it, and I put it in a little bowl and I twirl, I'm going to flick it with my fingers and then just let it keep spinning on a supported spot in my hand. And you can see I can get a lot of spin out of that. This is going to be awesome for short fibers, cotton, maybe some of the luxury fibers, yak, Kiviot, etc. We're going to be doing tons and tons and tons of twist for a short fiber, whereas a longer fiber can have less. Now, if I've got my wooden spindle here, I can twirl. It won't make nearly as much noise because it's not metal on pottery. But again, I can twirl it with my hand and it will have that small bit on the bottom, a really small point will spin faster. Now, if I take a large stick and it has a large end, it will not spin as much or as long. And in this case, I don't even have a weight on it. But let's see. Here is just a dowel rod that I sharpened with a pencil sharpener and put a polymer clay bead on. And I baked this whole thing, stick plus clay, together. And that thin spot on the tip makes it easier to twirl on a supported fashion. And I can spin it with the whirl at the bottom, or I can spin it with the whirl at the top. And it still will twirl pretty nicely. Now, this is the point where you get to figure out which hand you like best for twirling. So I could switch it over to my other hand and figure out which one I like best. Do I flick with my thumb away from me? Do I pull towards me? Do I flick away? Do I flick towards? And eventually, whichever hand is your spindle hand needs to be able to do both clockwise and counterclockwise on any spindle. If you are going to be plying, you will spin one direction, you will ply the other direction. There's also other techniques for plying without being a flick, but you can flick with your hand to do the opposite direction. So when you are first learning to twirl a spindle, let's see, doing it with one hand versus the other will give you a sense of, oh yeah, maybe I am more of a left-handed spindle person versus, in my case, a right-handed spindle person. But the reason I also have the little cup is that that spindle doesn't even need to be held by me when I set it down. So when I'm working with suspended spinning, I love a nice tall cup that my spindle won't fall out of because I can twirl it. I don't even really have to hold it, or I can step away from the work here. And if I want to show that to you sideways, and again, that's just a flick with the hand and letting it just roll on my skin and letting it sit in the cup for that one, or flicking it in a bowl here, flicking it on the ground, either one. So this is the fun part in my experience. I'm going to get some fiber and I'm going to get a spindle. I'm going to get some other fiber so that you can see what I'm working on in contrast. So again, I'm going to just pull and draft some of that fiber out so that you can see both. And I should start my fiber. Well, I could start it with that wrap technique, get a leader going, or I can pull it out with my fingers and twirl it with my fingertips. And I have another video that I'll give you guys the link for that I made during lockdown 4 years ago today. It was on the Ides of March in 2020 when I posted another one that showed a little bit about making my leader just with my fingers. And then I like to tie a little knot with my yarn that I've started. And before it's very long, I could also just twirl the stick and let the yarn go around the stick. So you can see that it's going around, in this case, you can see it coming off the edge, and it's making that diagonal line tighter. So the twist is in fact tighter, which is just like when I was wrapping it before, but now I'm just doing it with my fingertips. And now I can pull out these little fibers. See if I can get it. I think I'm going to do this one with the overhead. So I've got my spindle. Now when I pull my little fibers out, I'm just twirling the spindle without letting go of the shaft. And that fiber is going around and around and around. And I have tension on it. So you can see that I'm getting that twist between my white and my darker fibers. And here I am pulling out a little bit of fiber of both colors. And when I let go here, but I pinch here, the twist goes between the two hands. And especially when I put tension on that piece of yarn. Now I have the opportunity to, if I want, wind the yarn onto the spindle. Now my other video talks about making an anchor at the bottom and then coming up. I'm going to show you my current style, a la Abby Frankmont. And that is that I put a spiral up the shaft till I get to the end. And this is when I'm going to do my half hitch. Now, the half hitch is just a loop that has a twist in it. So I can pick any finger that's free, put a finger under the yarn to make a loop and twist it. That's one really easy way to do it. Another way is if I'm holding the spindle, I have my thumb free and I can hold my thumb as the loop. And as long as I'm trapping a yarn between my thumb and the spindle, the twist is going to be in there when I drop that loop over and it traps the yarn that I'm pulling. So now I can twirl the spindle just barely off camera. And that twist is getting tighter and tighter. So now I can really officially do park and draft. Park the spindle, let it not untwist, pinch in a spot that's not twisted, or twirl my thumb to even undo the pinch, draft some fibers thinner, pinch it here, and then when I let go, that twist goes all the way up, and I need tension, and then I add more twist. So I'm adding more twist, and this is where I will switch the camera again soon. When I park it, it goes nowhere, and I have a free hand. So I can pinch, pull, pinch, let the twist go up. And that one went pretty fast. So then if I switch it to showing it to you sideways, there's my up and down. And I like to really hold the fiber up in the air so that I really am showing that the gravity is pulling on that yarn for me. Then I can add more twist, add more twist, add more twist, add more twist. And this yarn is really getting extra coils when I release the tension. So if I park it, I might even have to park it with something on it. If it really is having trouble, then I can adjust the light so it's not quite so bright, attenuate out, draft, the overlapping fibers thinner, pinch, and let that twist go back up. And when I put tension on it, you can really see the twist going to all those sections. So I'm going to pause there for a moment, switch back to the computer.
I know I've been showing a lot of stuff and talking nonstop. So now I want to check in with you and see how you're doing. And if you've got questions, Sarah, I'll need you to repeat your question since I talked past remembering what it was.
My question had to do with when you have twist, you've rolled out twist, you've put twist in, But you have a section that didn't really twist, it just sort of laid there and the twist jumped up.
Yes, now I remember. Okay, so if you've got a section that does not seem to be twisted at all, treat it like it's live electrical current, and let's set up success for where the pinch will be. And that in this case is to pinch back where it is smaller. And when I pinch where it's smaller and I see that I've pinched, but there's still twist on this side, my fingers that are pinching can go bloop and untwirl it so that I have a straight line again. That way I can make it longer and thinner. Now, if I've left a bump in the middle and I really want to change it, so let me set myself up with a bump in the middle that I want to change.
Because the bump in the middle is what I keep getting.
Yes, and that's why I'm setting up one on purpose. Bump in the middle. Okay. I have a bump in the middle.
See,
There we go.
yo
So-
veo.
The large bump is going to require an untwist from both ends because the water won't go uphill on either side of that hill. So it's uphill both ways right now. So I have two hands and I can go to the edge of the large bump and untwirl both of them so that they will actually pull. And then I need to actually pull slowly and carefully to make all of it straight again. And then you can see the twist is already jumping into the new spots, and the larger bits are large and the smaller bits are small. So we're back to adding more twist and then checking to see what that twist looks like when it gets to the fatter sections under tension.
Danke sehr.
Already, those sections are looking smaller now because I've got the live twist going through and I've basically knocked down a large hill so that the water can be more evenly distributed on my little flat piece of ground. Now, if I still don't like it, I have a couple of things I can do. I could be crazy and like undo all of them and attenuate all of them out thinner and then let the twist go in. Or this is my early recommendation for spinners. Fill 3 spindles with whatever you spin before you start working on making things thinner, more consistent, and learning other joins. Because you have so many muscles that you need to train and give yourself the muscle memory and the experience that I would want you to fill a spindle 3 times. Now, in this case, this spindle is not full yet. So maybe 2, 3, 4 times as much on this. But in this case, that also isn't really very fair because it's super, super thin. Clearly, this is not my first, second, or third spindle. So this is not a fully good judge for how much a full spindle might be. But let's say you had at least this much volume of yarn. Boop, boop. Hey, there's a dark background. On a spindle before you said, okay, that spindle's full. And then there we go. And you do that 3 times before you start worrying about the consistency of the yarn that you're making. So handle the fiber, pull it apart, get it to behave, find out how long the little hairs are so you understand the staple length. Using wrapping methods will help you see the twist and help you start a large bulky yarn easily, or maybe start a leader. Twirling is going to be that flick with your fingers. And again, practicing it by just twirling it in a bowl is really, really helpful for getting that twirling, twisting feeling into your hands. We've talked a little bit about joining, but I think we need to look at specifically some other things about joining and drafting the fiber out. Any other questions before I go to some of the joins? Good so far? Have I been a nice soothing voice? Has everybody who's up late fallen asleep?
Of course. Thank you so much. Yo capisco better.
All right, so I'm going to switch back over to...
So I've got this large quantity of yarn that I made. There we go. It's probably time for me to wrap it on. Well, I've talked a little bit about keeping things under tension. One of the nice things that you can do then is to take your fiber hand and hold on to the yarn while your spindle hand's getting ready to do other things. And I can pretend like I'm the little itsy bitsy spider and just coil the yarn around any fingers, whether it's a figure 8 or a circle, because now my spindle hand is close to, my fiber hand over here is close to my spindle. And my fiber hand can put 2 fingers around those half hitches and pinch that yarn against the stick. And because I've spiraled up the stick, I can untwirl that spiral and pull the yarn off the end. And now my loops fall out, which is great because now my spindle hand can pick up my spindle and twirl the yarn on and hold on to the yarn I made before I'm making more. I like to call this the cotton candy style because I flip it up and I'm rolling the cotton candy yarn onto the stick. Now I've got a little bit of yarn left that I can spiral up the shaft of the spindle, or maybe I need a little bit more. Let me give myself a little bit more to spiral up the shaft, get close to the end, put my loop on my thumb to drop my half hitch on, loop on my thumb to drop my half hitch on. And now I'm ready to start making more yarn from this fiber. Oh, let me pull some of that off. So I have a manageable small quantity because I want it to run out so that I can have to add more. So I've got live electrical current twist everywhere because nothing is pinched right now. So I have to add my pinch to where the pinch is going to be. And in this case, I've got small threads there and a large bump. So I want my pinch to be somewhere up in that small thread area. And if I pinch here and twirl, I've straightened out that dark fiber. So when it's time to add new fiber, I like to call it old fiber, new fiber. So this is old yarn, this is new yarn. It's not twisted at all. This has twist being trapped. And I need to put some of the new fluffy bits into that pinch so that I have old and new next to each other and a place for the overlap to happen. So from that overlap, I want to pull a little bit of the dark and a little bit of the light next to each other so that when I put a new pinch in and then I let go, it has a chance of the twist going. Well, I don't see any twist at all. So I need to back up and untwirl some of that dark a little bit more. That way, when I can put both dark and light together, see if that shows up at all. And I put it under tension. Aha, the white is starting to curl around it. So I have a better chance of success if the twist is starting to snag that little guy there. Now, even though the end is a little bit loose, that's okay. When I add more twist and add more twist and add more twist, I didn't do anything fancy to smush the white. The twist itself grabbed both dark and light to start making that longer bit. So now when I pull that pinch apart and pull these fibers down, I have dark and light both next to each other and a new pinch. Now I want to put it under tension. And did you see the twist just absolutely went to the new pinch area? Sorry, the twist went to the new pinch under tension. I do that one more time. I pull out a few more hairs. I put a brand new gate in to stop the twist at the new hand. And I slide this hand out and put it under tension. And the twist went up the whole thing. So if I add more twist, add more twist, add more twist, I can see the coils. If I release the tension, I can park the spindle so that my hand is free. I can put the pinch on the spindle hand and have that fiber hand pulling out some fluff, both dark and light, putting a brand new pinch in, and then keep it under tension. And when I keep it under tension, the twist will go up. So that is another major feature of getting the joins to work, is having tension and twist on the yarn rather than letting it be just super floppy and coily. And now you're kind of poking it going, well, why won't you work? Well, try putting it under tension. And putting it under tension is going to give it a better chance of the twist going up. So the last trick here is what to do with this hand. What is the fiber hand doing? Because I've been doing this really slow and just like methodically drafting it out in nice long straight lines. But can you see that it's starting to be all big and poofy? It's been scraped a little bit. And what I don't want to do is scrape the fiber, but I want to be able to like adjust it so it's coming straight, and then it's not coiling up on making a big felted mess. So if I see a big felted mess, I have two things to worry about: loosening up my fiber hand so I'm not gripping and scraping, and taking a little time to draft that fiber out a little bit smoother, a little bit straighter. And if it comes all the way off, go right back to old yarn, new yarn, and put that loose bit into the pinch again so that it can be encouraged to be part of it. So now when I pull it under tension, the twist is going up, even though there's poofier bits. Now I'm going to add more twist, keep it under tension, and those poofier bits got smaller. Twist, 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 and pulled this fiber out. I let go and keep this under tension. I have a good solid yarn again. So that is another helpful trick with joins, is a little bit of both old and new, a little untwirl with the thumb to make it straight, trying to pull so that it's like that very first experiment of, can I just pull a few fibers off the end? And if I can pull a few fibers off the end, it is skinnier, narrower, and ready for that twist. And when that twist is under tension, it goes all the way out the whole length of the yarn. Questions about that? I am pinching the yarn, untwirling the spiral to slide it off the end, holding my cotton candy to wind it on. Running up the spiral, a loop on my thumb where I trap the yarn, and a second loop on the thumb where I trap the yarn. Now, what if I wanted to do it supported? So if I wanted to do it supported, this fiber is going to go, again, spiral up the end, but not half hitch. It's just going to be caught in my hand as I twirl it. So old fiber, new fiber. I have to add lots and lots and lots of twist, lots and lots and lots of twist. And you can see I didn't even do anything special to it. But now if I've got it at like an angle, it'll fall off the end. Every time I twist it, it's one more twist going into the yarn. If I want to park it, I can, and just attenuate out, draft that fiber, let the twist go up live. If I'm doing it fast, I'm just pulling away from the spindle regularly and letting the twist keep going. Just as I am spinning, I just keep pulling. Well, I don't have to half hitch at all. What I'm going to do now, I've put extra twist in, I kept tension on. I'm just going to pull my arm away, going to wind on to the spindle, wind up the top, and let it fall off the point of the spindle so that it's more twisty. In this case, I'm going to pause for a moment so that I can untwirl and draft. And depending on the preparation of the fiber, that drafting might occasionally require two hands. Or if you've got a really well carded rollog, which is another form of how fibers can be made, it should pull a little bit easier. So, and then it's just a matter of winding on what I just made, spiraling up, and drafting that fiber thinner in this case, so that it just falls off the end. And on that 45-degree angle is when I can continue pulling that fiber apart, letting the twist go up. And again, having it under tension is going to make the actual yarn.
How are we feeling? Little tricks that can be helpful for you? Yeah, I see a thumbs up from Nola. I got a big smile from Kayla. All right, so moving into, oh, I'm so glad this is helpful for you, Sorcha.
We'll see how much I retain when I can actually spin again.
Exactly. And it's all about, well, it's a practice-based skill.
I know.
Built into the practice is what's going to be required.
I'm trying to get up to 50 to 5-year-old status.
So one of the next things about continuous spinning is it's okay to keep park and draft as one of your tools in your toolkit. Do not stress out that you have to be like, oh, I could just spin. I still park and draft. One of my favorite ways to park and draft is I'll have my half hitch on and I'll be spinning, and then I will lean it against my body somewhere so it doesn't untwist. It might be a thigh. It might be the side of my body. It might be my lap. But if I lean it against my body, especially with the gravity, I've still got tension on the yarn. Oh, there we go. Is it visible? There we go. I've still got tension on the yarn and it's not untwirling. And there's no shame at all in just pausing in order to draft and then hang it and keep spinning. There are technically 3 different ways that spindles can be used. You can use it in a suspended fashion where it actually just hangs and occasionally you let go and then you catch it and do things with it. I've also demonstrated supported where it's always on a surface, like in a cup or a bowl or the ground on your leg. I don't use my skewers on my leg because none of my pants are thick enough to keep from stabbing myself with metal. So don't stab yourself with metal. Don't bleed for your art, please. I'm going to caution you to maybe pay attention to the actual sharpness of your spindles.
I thought you were supposed to bleed while quilting.
Again, I'm not quilting, so I'm not sure what the other crafts have in mind for your blood sacrifices, but some of my wooden spindles have been really extraordinarily sharp. You are absolutely encouraged to modify your own tools so that they work for you. If you need to emery board this down or grab a little bit of sidewalk and scrape it on the concrete to soften that end so it doesn't stab you, please don't have pain. That also brings me to your arms and your wrists and your hands. The small muscle movements get fatigued more quickly than the large muscle movements. So while your legs might be tired walking around an amusement park, it might take all day till you're exhausted, or it might only take a really nice long walk and that'll get you exhausted. The tiny muscles will take less time to be fatigued, especially when you are learning a new skill with tiny muscles. So do not be discouraged if you are suddenly sore after 15, 20 minutes. Totally fine. Take a break. Maybe it's only 5 minutes that you've got stamina for. Maybe the next time you try it, you'll last 5 minutes and 10 seconds before you're exhausted. It is okay to take longer to learn the micro muscle movements and that stamina that you might need for whatever your goal is for spinning. Is much better to spin for only 5 minutes once a week than to spin for 5 hours and hurt yourself and not get to return to it at all. And I'm not saying that actually based about anybody on this screen. I'm actually saying that about someone who tried spinning 8 hours a day
Right.
their first week of spinning And then they were really, really sad. They couldn't spin anymore. And we were like, sweetie, there's no reason for you to spin for 8 hours. That's totally fine. Don't do that. So, cautionary tale from years gone past. Give yourself the grace to recover, and learning has to have sleep cycles. You cannot learn things if you never sleep, and you will learn better the more you have those sleep cycles to process what you've been picking up on and dreaming up solutions and trying them out again the next day that you have a chance, and experimenting, because the experimentation is where you're going to take what you've heard and seen and try to make it happen in your muscles, which is totally different than just watching them. Even though you can watch this over and over again and have me say the same thing over and over again, it will still click differently in the doing. But that takes me to my favorite trick after you've done with singles. So now you've got a bunch of yarn, and I told you to make 3 whole spindles full, and you only have 1 spindle. Well, now what are you going to do? How are you going to fill up the second spindle? You can take, let's say, the cardboard from the inside of a roll of toilet paper and just wrap all of the yarn that you made around it, put it in a Ziploc bag, set it aside. Fill the spindle a second time, wrap it off, set it aside. Fill the spindle a third time, wrap it off, set it aside. Then we can really start to worry about plying. But I am going to show you a little bit about this because I haven't put this on a video anywhere yet. So I've got a bunch of fluff, and it's got singles wrapped around it because I wanted to take it off the spindle and save it for later. So I'm going to just try and get this here till I get to the end. There we go. There's my fluff and my string. Oh, I've got more still. Here we go. Aha, I made it to the fluff. So I'm going to tear that off. And I have a bunch of singles. So what I can do with this, let me put this in my other hand for a moment, is take this first loose end, wrap it around my finger, and make a grippy hand like I'm holding an entire roll of duct tape or a grapefruit or something else large, and gently wrap the yarn around a grippy hand. I say gently because I have made the mistake of doing this tightly and then squishing my fingers together and my hands hurt. And again, I'm not about hurting you. So if I wrap my singles around a large grippy hand, the point is what I'm trying to do is get the 2 ends of the yarn that I made. And I want to have all of the yarn in the circle, and the circle has to be big enough to go over my wrist. So let me get rid of that bracelet. I didn't even use it. There we go. So I'm almost done here. This was a nice small spindle full of wrapping yarn around my wrist. Well, eventually around my wrist, wrapping it around my fingers in a large grippy circle. There we go. So I have the end that I just ended with, and when I slide the bracelet over, I've still got that small loop that I put on my finger to start with, which means now I have the beginning and the end of my singles. And I have my beginning and my end. I mentioned that you'll have to be able to do both clockwise and counterclockwise. And switching to having 2 fibers wrap around each other is to switch to the other direction. And often I look at this and I'm like, I don't know which way I spun it. Which way is the opposite? I don't know which way is the opposite. Here's a cool trick. Hold the 2 ends together. Hold this under tension. Let go of the loose ends. They will wrap around each other the correct direction. So they are now wrapped the way that the plying is going to go. So now we can get to plying. So I have this end that is my loose ends wrapping around each other, and I have this bracelet loosely around my wrist. So I'm going to get my spindle back, brand new spindle here, and I'm going to tie this plied piece around my spindle just like before. And this plying bracelet is going to be how I do my yarn management to keep it from getting tangled. It's essentially a center pull ball. If you are a knitter or crocheter of some sort who has done center pull balls before, I've made my center pull ball with my hand in the center.
Now I've got this plied yarn that's on my spindle. And if I twirl the spindle again, clockwise or counterclockwise, I can figure out which one makes it tighter, which one makes it looser. That one makes it looser. So let me try this direction. Ooh, that twist is getting tighter and tighter. So now I know that's the direction. I don't have to name it clockwise or counterclockwise. I just twirl it and I see it getting more twisty. So here's my hand. What I want to do is duck my hand out of the circle once and then out of the circle a second time, and it got longer. And now if I loop it on my thumb once, it gets easier to hold them the same length with tension under them. And now I can pinch them close together again and add more twist. So I'm adding more twist, I'm adding more twist. And then I'm going to spiral up the shaft and treat it just like spinning, but I have to go the opposite direction now. So I've put my half hitch on. I can now see my 2 threads coming from thumb and over my hand. And I have to remember which direction is the ply direction. And if I twirl it counterclockwise, oh, look, it just got super tight. So now I want to duck my hand out of the circle once and out of the circle a second time and pull, and maybe wrap it once around my thumb or once around my finger so that both of them are under the same amount of tension. And now when I let go, that twist goes all the way up to the loose bits, and I'm back to adding my plying twist and duck my hand out once or duck my hand out twice. Now in this case, I want to pinch it where it's still twisted because I want to save the yarn that I plied. And this one I don't have to hold under tension when I come up close because it's plied, it's going to be a stable yarn. So I'm winding it on as my plied yarn and I'm spiraling up until I can put a half hitch on. There it is. And one more. And now I've got this V of 2 singles, this paired singles. I can duck my hand out once to make it longer, hold it under tension, add my counterclockwise twist, twist and catch, twist and catch, twist and catch, twist and catch, and my ply is going up way to the top. So I can hold that pinch, duck my hand out of the circle once, out of the circle a second time, and put it under tension, pinch it. And now my singles right now, when I undo the twist at the bottom and hold it under tension, I'm back to applied yarn. And now I add more plying twist and more plying twist. So while I'm doing that, let me tell you a little bit about the amount of twist that you need for something. You can vary the amount of twist at the singles stage and at the plying stage. And this is a fun experiment when you start making a bunch of yarn and you're trying to figure out how do I make this kind of yarn versus that kind of yarn. Try making some singles that feel like they have very low twist. Try making some singles with a medium amount of twist, and try making some singles with high twist. Then try plying them differently so that you could ply them with a very low amount of plying twist, a very medium amount of plying twist, or a very high amount of plying twist. Because then if you are a knitter or a crocheter or a weaver and you want to use the yarn that you just made, and you like this 2-ply yarn, you can compare what is it like to crochet with yarn that had low amounts of twist or high amounts of twist. Does my sample come out more skewed to one direction than the other? Does my sample have better stretch? That your yarn is not just the size of the yarn, but also the quantity of twist that you have put into the singles, and separately, the amount of twist that you've put into your plies. Now, if you make a large plying bracelet and you are just taking some small quantities of yarn and plying a little small section into a 2-ply yarn from your bracelet, that is typically one Andean technique for plying. But there's a misnomer out there that Andean plying is about taking large quantities of yarn and putting all of it on your hand in another fancy wrap style, which is not my bracelet, but another fancy wrap style, and that you can even make tools for Andean plying, blah, blah, blah. Allow me to help correct some language on that. It's just a trick that is sometimes done from a spindle with small quantities of yarn, not with large bobbins and not with weird tools. You're welcome to try other things with plying, and there are many people who do ply with a variety of different tools or from their bobbins to their wheel. But when you do a small bracelet quickly, while that is an Andean plying technique for small quantities of yarn, it is not how large quantities of yarn are applied in the Andes. And so I hope that that helps dispel some of the misconceptions out there about plying off of your wrist. Now, here's the cool part. I'm almost at the end, and I've added my plying twist here. I've dropped my hand out of the circle. And at the very end, I have the loop. It is the middle. My whole yarn has been folded in half. And now I take off that half hitch. I can wind on my yarn here, and I have a small quantity of 2-ply yarn. The next trick would be to then soak it in some water and hang it to dry. There are some people who like to describe that if you hang applied yarn, that it should hang with no coiling and no twisting. If it has no coiling and no twisting at all, that could be more accurately described as twist stasis. Some people might call that a balanced yarn, but sometimes you want a yarn that has more twist than stopping at twist stasis. And the type of weaving I do is one of those types of yarns that should have higher twist at the ply stage.
And now that is actually the sum total of the tricks and tips I wanted to give you for starting on spindles. Oh, I said there were 3 ways that you could work with a spindle: suspended or supported. And the third way is called grasped in hand. And very frequently, if you are using a small whirl on just a single shaft and you are doing, let's say, some of the very specific Middle Ages European techniques, you may never actually let go. You may spin it in hand and keep grasping it the whole time. For example, you might have a distaff, a large stick that has the fiber up above your shoulder, and you're pulling down with one hand to just bring the fiber. And then on the other hand, you're just spinning and catching and spinning and catching. So grasped in hand is a third technique of spinning with a spindle. It is very common for some very specific years and centuries and places in Europe in the Middle Ages. There's a couple other places around the world in history that have done grasped in hand. You can briefly suspend a grasped in hand spindle as you're going. You can briefly support grasped in hand spinning. So there's this give and take of going back and forth between I flicked it in the air and then I caught it. But was there a brief moment that it was just by itself in the air? Or I flicked it in the air and it rested briefly on the ground, but then I caught it again. So it can blend back and forth between supported, suspended, and grasped in hand spinning. It is my least practiced style, so I'm not as good at demonstrating grasped in hand. It can be a little bit slower, and I happen to love suspended style. I'm trying to still build up my skills in supported style. But the very basics are the same. Twist plus overlap. So if your yarns are breaking, falling apart, dropping, you are missing either or both the twist and the overlap. So reducing the twist and putting new overlaps of untwisted items in place, having twists that can go into it and putting that under tension will encourage that twist and overlap to continue to make a continuous piece of yarn so that you can continue adding more twist, more drafting, more fiber, wrapping it on, saving it, and eventually plying it or using it as a single. That's my whole list of what I wanted to share with you. Does anyone have any other specific questions or struggles that maybe I can address, or questions about what you saw tonight? Well, I wish you absolutely all the best for your spinning. I am on all the socials and all the onlines and all the places, and I will answer questions anytime. I may not be awake when you send me a note, but you will never wake me up. You are welcome to email or ping me on Discord or ping me on Instagram or ping me on Facebook or trap somebody who knows my phone number and see if you can get through that way. But I would absolutely love to be able to help you with any of your struggles with spinning. It's my favorite thing to do, my favorite thing to teach. And I like to see the light go on for people where you're like, oh my gosh, I finally did the thing. So I hope that is helpful. Oh, before I go, let me give you guys a link. This is the video I made 4 years ago in lockdown on the Ides of March. And it is a little bit more up close on some of that pulling fiber apart. That's step one, as well as my old way of doing an anchor on the bottom. And again, more close-ups of doing half hitches. So that is a second resource that you can use. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night, great weekend.